All right, this is chapter 7, the human body. So we're going to integrate complex knowledge in anatomy and physiology of the airway, respiratory, and circulatory system as it applies to the practice of EMS. Pathophysiology implies comprehensive knowledge of the pathophysiology of respiration and perfusion to patient assessment. So, some intro stuff. Gross anatomy includes body parts visible to the naked eye. Microscopic anatomy involves body parts visible only through a microscope. And physiology examines body functions. So, the basic cells function as units. They're extremely varied in shape and function, become specialized to perform a specific function, and perform excretion and respiration, and communicate electrochemically. Just a couple more things. Cells that mature or differentiate and become specialized to perform a special function. Some examples of cells with a common function are grouped closely together, and they make up tissues. Groups of tissues that all perform interrelated jobs form organs. So a series of organs working together make up a body system. So you got cells that come together that make tissues. Tissues come together and make organs, and then organs come together to make the body system itself. So, here's a cell structure picture. There are two general classes of cell structure. You have sex cells and somatic cells. The nucleus contains the genetic material and controls the activities of the cells. So your nucleus is basically your brain, as far as your body is concerned. The brain of the cell is within the nucleus itself. The cell membrane, also called a plasma membrane, it allows movement into and out of the cell. Pathways allow signals from outside the body to be detected and transmitted inside. Extremely thin and delicate, these plasma membranes are. Tiny folds on the surface help increase surface area, so it allows for more signals to come in and out without more surface area. Composed of a bilayer containing phosphate and fat molecules from phospholipids, and it is semi-permeable. The cytoplasm is a full-light material in which the contents of the cell cytosol is the fluid portion of the cytoplasm. So it contains mostly water, as well as glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, ions, lipids, proteins, ATP, and waste products. Organelles accomplish tasks related to cell structure, growth, and maintenance, and metabolism. So organelles have specific actions that help them They have specific actions that help the cell to carry out its activity. So some of these specific areas are the centrioles. During serial division, centrioles form the spindle-shaped structure needed for movement of the DNA strand. Cell division requires a part of the centrioles. Cilia or flagellar extend from certain cell surfaces. Cilia move fluids across over the surface of tissues, and flagella prepare the cells to which they are attached. Ribosomes are composed of the protein and RNA, and they form proteins itself. Endoplasmic reticula is a network of paths through which substances and proteins move. And there's two types: there's the smooth, light ribosomes, and the rough that has ribosomes. So the reticulum can be comprised of ribosomes or not. The Golgi complex, it deals with protein synthesis for the ribosomes. So the main function, concentrating and packaging secretions that are released for secretions out of the cell, package special enzymes inside vesicles for use of the cytosol and renewing and modifying the cell membrane. Lysosomes are disposed of cell waste using enzymes to break down nutrients and foreign particles. Microfilaments, composed of proteins actin and myosin, provide cell movement and contraction via interaction with actin and myosin. The mitochondria, powerhouse of the cells, have double membranes. Outer mitochondrial membrane is smooth. The inner mitochondrial membrane has a series of folds called crista, and the central fluid-filled cavity is called the matrix. So, the nucleus is the largest structure in the cell. It serves as a control center. It contains the genetic instructions needed to synthesize the proteins that determine cell structures and functions. The structures consist of DNA and various proteins. And inside the nucleus is a fluid called nucleoplasm that suspends the nucleus in chromatin. All right, life cycle of the cell regulated via stimulation from hormones or growth factors. The life cycle is made up of interphase, and that's where it prepares the cell division and mitosis. It's the process it's called when the cell divides itself. Cytoplasmic division, it's called cytokinesis and differentiation. The interphase is the period between it's period in preparation to divide. The cell manufactures new living material and replicates its own genetic material. So there's two different types of cell division. There's meiosis and mitosis. Meiosis reduces the number of chromosomes by 1/2. During mitosis, the cell duplicates itself into a daughter cell, and it is an identical copy. And then the cytoplasmic membrane, cytoplasmic division, also cytokinesis, begins during the second phase of mitosis. Cell membrane constricts down the middle portion of the cell, divides the cytoplasm, and the two newly formed nuclei are separated, and half of the organelles are distributed into each new cell. So, life cycle of the cell. Cell division and growth occur at approximately the same rate as cell death. When cell division and growth occur at a higher rate than cell death, tissues enlarge. So the neoplasm is the massive tissue produced by abnormal cell growth or division. A benign tumor is when it remains within the epithelium. Seldom becomes life-threatening and can usually be surgically removed. Malignant tumor spreads throughout into the surrounding tissues in a process called invasion. May result in malignant cells traveling to other organs or tissues to establish secondary tumors. That's metastatic cancer, when they use that word, when it spreads really fast. Malignancy occurs when a normal gene mutates. Cancer cells can change shape as they grow and gradually resemble normal cells less and less. So the presence of tumor cells stimulate the growth of new blood vessels and has metastasis and increases organ function changes. So cellular respiration uses glucose and oxygen to release energy from organic compounds. Glycolysis occurs in the cytosol of the cytoplasm. It involves a series of enzymatically catalyzed reactions, and it does not require oxygen. So that's one thing that is always talked about with glycolysis, is it does not require oxygen. So here's a diagram of cellular respiration. You got two ADP that transfer into two ADP, and two NADs that transfer into two NADHs, and that's just the hydrogen atom being atom. It releases NAD here into the electron transport system, and then that produces your 32 ATPs with water and hydrogen. So also shows you the pyruvic axis that may turn into lactic axis. It releases two different compounds, acetyl CoA and the lactic acid. So this is the top portion is your anaerobic, and that means without oxygen. The bottom portion in the mitochondria does require oxygen, so it's aerobic metabolism, and it's with oxygen. So your citric acid cycle sits in here and it goes, and it produces two ATPs too. So the Krebs cycle is an aerobic process that sequences of enzymatic reactions involving the metabolism of carbon chains of glucose, fatty acids, and amino acids. Respiration can still occur via anaerobic process. So it is a sequence. Basically, when food is ingested, large macromolecules are broken down into simple molecules. Proteins are broken down into amino acids. Carbohydrates are broken down into simple sugars. Fats are broken down into both glycerol and fatty acids. Glycerol and amino acids are broken down into pyruvic acid. So after glycolysis, the Krebs cycle have occurred. A total of 4 molecules of ATP have been produced. So when oxygen is absent, respiration can still occur via anaerobic process, and lactic acidosis can develop with a shock due to insufficient oxygen. So the electron transport chain has 32 molecules of ATP are produced in the aerobic process. So it's for cellular respiration, glucose and oxygen are required. Half of the energy that is recaptured has high energy electrons stored in the cells through the synthesis of ATP. So the end result is 38 molecules of ATP. So cellular transport mechanisms, how materials enter and exit the cell. The cellular membrane is selectively permeable, so it helps maintain homeostasis. Homeostasis is the normal in which your body tries to stay at all the time. If it's not at homeostasis, then it is going to try to do something to get back to it. So allows differences of concentrations between intracellular and extracellular environments. Cell membrane determines whether the materials are allowed to pass through. So if that difference between intracellular and extracellular environments is on either side of a cell membrane, and this is called the concentration gradient. All right, so diffusion is the passive movement of solute from an area of higher to lower concentration. Always try to remember that with diffusion, high to low. That's the big one there, high to low. Filtration is another method of moving substances. Kidneys filter compounds from the blood and waste are removed from the blood and excreted in the urine. This facilitated diffusion energy is not. Oh, sorry about that, y'all. All right, facilitated diffusion. The carrier molecule removes substances in and out of cells. Energy is not required. The number of molecules transported is directly proportional to the amount of the concentration. So there's three forms of endocytosis. Um, Endocytosis is the process that uses energy from the cell to move substances into and out of the cell while crossing the cell membrane. So the three forms are pinocytosis, phagocytosis, and receptor-mediated endocytosis. Next, osmosis. Osmosis is the passive movement of a solvent from an area of low to high solute concentration. The osmotic pressure is the measure of the tendency of water to move by osmosis across a membrane. So, tonicity is the concentration of a solution or its ability to draw or give water. So basically, you got a collapsed cell that's hypertonic. You make it isotonic, and that means it's normal. Then you get a swollen cell, and it bursts. So that makes it hypotonic. All right, intracellular fluid within the individual cells. It equals approximately 40 to 45% of the body weight. Extracellular fluid is outside the cell membrane. It's approximately 15 to 20% of the body weight. ECF, extracellular fluid, is divided into intravascular fluid and interstitial fluid. So intravascular fluid, the plasma is found within the blood vessels, and this accounts for approximately 4.5% of total body weight. Interstitial fluid is located between the spaces between the body cells and amounts for approximately 10.5% of the total body weight. The fluid is lost from anywhere in the body. It distributes the balance amongst various fluid compartments. So fluid balance helps maintain homeostasis through equal intake and output of fluid. Okay? So the sensation of thirst occurs when the body fluids become decreased. All right, organ systems. The organ is composed of at least two kinds of tissue organized to form a complex task. There's 12 major organ systems. So the skeletal system gives us our recognizable human form and protects vital internal organs. Okay, so bones give structure, ligaments, they're bone to bone, tendons, go muscle to bone, and the cartilage tissues go between the bones. The bones are long bones, short bones, flat bones, and then irregular bones. So your long bones will consist of a shaft, the end of it, and then the growth or epiphyseal plate that should go right at the top of the long bones. Two main types of bones: compact bone, cancellous bones. These consist of a lazy network of bony rods called trabecula. All right, then you have joints. Joints are where your two long bones come into contact, and you can see there you got the synovium fluid and the capsule. This gives you cartilage, and then you have your tendons over here that help connect bone to bone, with your ligaments also. So joints, bone ends of a joint are held together by a joint capsule. Ball and socket joint, kind of like your shoulders, and your hinge joints like your elbows and knees. Axial skeleton is divided into two systems: axial skeleton and appendicular skeleton. Axial skeleton is composed of the sclerothoracic cage and vertebral column. The appendicular skeleton is composed of the arms and legs and the connection point in the pelvis. So the heart, lung, and the great vessels are in the thorax. All right, the skull consists of 28 bones and 3 anatomic groups: auditory, isosceles, cranium, and face. So your cranium is made up of 3 different kind of parts: your frontal, parietal, and your temporal bones. In there, I use those frontal, parietal, and temporal areas sometimes to describe where like a headlight may be. So you got all your different bones in the face there also. So mandible maximum, always just remember, your mandibles down with the D. Nasal bone and sagoma bone, all that's your sinuses. The skull itself, cranial vaults consist of 8 bones that encase and protect the brain. The bones of the skull are connected by sutures, and each one of these sutures have a different name also. So you see your sagittal suture there, coronal suture, and all these have different names. Fibrous tissues called continents link the sutures. The floor of the cranial vault is divided into 3 compartments: the anterior fossa, the middle fossa, and the posterior fossa. You got 14 bones in your facial bones of the face, protect the eyes, ear, nose, and tongue. You have bones of the orbit, cone-shaped fossa that encloses and protects each eye, contains blood vessels, nerves, and fat. Blood fracture, leakage of blood and fat into the maxillary sinuses. So bones on the nose, nasal cavity comprises portions of several of the bones. Nasal septum is the separation between the nostrils and the paranasal sinuses. The mandible and temporomandibular joint. The mandible is the large movable bone comprising the lower jaw and containing the lower teeth. The posterior condyle and the mandible articulates with the temporal bone at the temporomandibular joint, and the higher bone floats in the superior aspect of the neck and supports them. So now the neck contains carotid arteries. They're found on either side of the trachea. There's several useful landmarks. The Adam's apple is the upper part of the thyroid cartilage. The lower portion of the cricoid cartilage. Between the thyroid cartilage and cricoid cartilage in the midline of the neck is a soft depression, and that is your cricothyroid membrane. And you'll learn, if you continue on in EMS, what you will do with all of that. So, spinal column is the central supporting structure of the body. It's divided into 5 sections: your cervical, your thoracic, your lumbar, your sacrum, and coccyx. So, don't forget about that coccyx, especially in your geriatric age patients. Cervical spine we talk about all the time, C1 through 6. Correction, C1 through 7. Your thoracic is the next 12, T1 through 12. Your lumbar is the next 5. The sacrum is 5 fused vertebrae together. The first C1 is called your atlas. The atlas articulates at the occipital condyles at the base of the skull at the atlanto-occipital joint. The second vertebrae is called your axis, and the point in which the head rotates. So those are 2 pretty significant ones. They both of them fracture, and it's a pretty bad fracture there. You'll learn about that too. Spinal cord is an extension of the brain. It's contained within and protected by the vertebrae. So, and you can see the makeup of the vertebrae here. And I always remember that these vertebrae help house the spinal cord itself. Okay, then you see the spinal nerve root that comes out here too, and then the body of the vertebrae to the back, and you got pedicles and all that. So these get pretty interesting as they go down. Um, so you can have a spinal fracture, but it may not mess with your spinal cord. Pretty significant fractures though do get the spinal cord too and fracture it. Um, so you may just have a vertebrae that has a um, bony part that may be fractured. That's what they're seeing in the X-rays and CT. That doesn't mean that the patient has nerve damage, but however, you have to be really careful with these patients too, not to worsen the injury itself. All right, the thorax is formed by 12 thoracic vertebrae and pairs of ribs. The boundaries of the thorax are the rib cage anteriorly, superiorly, and posteriorly, and the diaphragm inferiorly. The anterior midline of the chest is the sternum. That's the middle part. The upper section of the sternum is called the manubrium. The body comprises the rest of the sternum except for a narrow cartilage tip inferiorly, which is called the xiphoid process. Down at the very bottom, large structures throughout the thoracic cage of the heart, neck, lungs, and great vessels. So the esophagus lies behind the great vessels and directly on the anterior aspect of the spinal column, and all space within the chest that is not occupied by the heart is occupied by the lungs. So the thorax covers a lot of vital organs. So that's why usually we have a lot of pain when they become. So this just kind of shows you what all it does protect here. Pretty important part of the skeletal system. The appendicular skeleton is the shoulder girdle. You have the scapula and the clavicle area. The shoulder girdle attaches the upper extremity to the body to the joint. And the two major components of the girdle are the scapula and clavicle, and the raised tip of the scapula is called the acromion process. The shoulder joint is a ball and socket joint. The bursa is a pad-like sac situated between the tendon and the bone that cushions and protects the joint. So the bursa is pretty important, and it helps keep that stuff cushioned so it doesn't hurt every time. Upper extremity has the arm, forearm, wrist, hands, and fingers, and the humerus itself. So you have the radius and the ulna down at the bottom too. That can make it the lower arm. Your biceps brachia and humerus is within that too. Your triceps. The appendicular skeleton, the forearm and the waist. Correction, the wrist. There's different names of the fingers. So your thumb, your index, long, ring, small. All these are made up of phalanges, which is the bones within the fingers itself. Your metatarsals are down there towards the bottom of the hand, and then you got your carpals. And then your ulna and radius come in. The pelvic girdle, where the lower extremity attaches to the body, is the ring of bones formed by sacrum and coxal bone. Contains 3 joints, 2 posterior joints, and 2 anterior midline pubic symphysis. These also help to say a lot of vital parts of the circulatory system, and that's your semen aorta and your anterior vena cava. The lower extremities, the hip, thigh, knee, legs, ankle, foot, toes. The femur is one big bone that in the lower extremity we'll talk about. And then the leg is made up of the tibia, fibula, the patella, and the kneecap articulates with the femur and the ankle joint. So patellas, I've seen them misplaced before too, so they can be fractured. I actually had a golfer fracture his patella one time. The knee, traditionally classified as a hinge joint, the anterior cruciate ligament, the ACL, prevents abnormal anterior movement. And then several tendons lead additional strength to the knee joint. So the knee joint is pretty important. It has a lot of tendons and muscles in there to help you move, your legs and stuff on a normal daily basis. The ankle articulates with the tibia and fibula, and you have fibrous capsules surround the ankle joint itself. So you got phalanges down here, metatarsal, and then you have different other names. All right. So, skeletal system and its physiology, bones protect internal organs and muscles, enable movement, consist of collagen and the mineral hydroxyapatite. Bones are living substances with cells and require blood supply. The anatomy of it provides form, upright posture, and movement of the human body. More than 600 muscles are in the skeletal system. Muscles outside the skeletal system include smooth muscle, that's your involuntary muscle, and cardiac muscle. So, skeletal muscles include all the muscles attached to skeleton, striated muscle, and voluntary muscle. So striated muscle that do very great size and shape. Unused muscle tends to lead to atrophy, where physical training promotes hypertrophy. Most muscles within the body operate on the principle of antagonistic pairs. So the biceps and upper arms competes with the triceps. So, physiology, a person's ability to move and manipulate his or her environment is made possible by contraction, relaxation of the system. Another function of muscles is to protect structures under them. Energy sources may include muscle fibers have just enough ATP for a short-term contraction. ATP must be regenerated when fibers are active using existing AT molecules in the cell. ATP is regenerated from adenosine diphosphate and phosphate. Okay, so that's where you get your ATP. When ATP breaks down, energy from creatine phosphate is transferred to ADP molecules to convert them back to ATP. Oxygen is required for the breakdown of glucose in mitochondria. So the oxygen depth, the amount of oxygen that liver cells require to convert the lactic acid into glucose. So one hemoglobin molecule reversibly binds with 4 oxygen molecules. The pigment myoglobin is synthesized in the. It can combine with oxygen to temporarily restore it to reduce muscular requirements. Lactic acid is a byproduct of anaerobic metabolism and can accumulate in muscles. It will then diffuse into the bloodstream. So the sensation of muscle fatigue occurs when energy supply to the muscle is inadequate to meet the muscular demand. All right, the respiratory system consists of all the structures of the body that contribute to respiration. The upper airway includes nose, mouth, tongue, jaw, and all that. Sounds are created as air is forced to pass the vocal cords. Okay? So the larynx, you see the upper airway is typically considered the dividing line between the upper and lower airway. The nostril leads to the nasopharynx. Um, the esophagus and trachea are located at the bottom of the pharynx. The epiglottis is the leaf-shaped valve that prevents food and liquid from entering the trachea. We'll talk about that, especially in pediatric patients. Thyroid cartilage is the anterior part of the larynx, and sounds created as air force pass the vocal cord. Right, the lower airway contains the trachea, bronchial tree, alveoli, and lungs. Gas exchange occurs here. Point of entry for the bronchial blood vessels and nerves in each lung is called the helium. After several generations of successive branching bronchioles, extremely small divisions of the bronchi are formed. Each bronchiole divides into form alveolar ducts, and each alveolar duct ends into clusters known as alveoli. So the lungs are surrounded by a membrane of connective tissue known as the pleura. The pleural space exists between the visceral and parietal pleura. The muscles of breathing, primary muscles, diaphragm, and the intercostal muscles itself. So the diaphragm is unique because of the characteristics of voluntary skeletal and involuntary smooth muscles. The diaphragm performs an automatic function, so we don't have to think about it. Thank the Lord. Other muscles involved in breathing are the intercostal muscles, the abdominal muscles, and pectoral muscles. So during inhalation, the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles contract, and during exhalation, the diaphragm and intercostal muscles relax. Chronic bronchitis is overgrowth of airway mucus glands and excess secretion mucus. So emphysema results from the destruction of alveolar walls, which creates resistance to expiratory airflow. So, the primary function of the respiratory system is to exchange gas at the alveolar capillary membrane. So, this is conduct respiration. Respiration is the diffusion, is the process by which gas dissolves in a liquid. Oxygen blood enters the left side of the heart and is pumped to the tissues. So, because there is no artery alveoli, a very large surface area exists for respiratory exchange to occur. Okay. So, chemical control breathing, brain automatically controls breathing. The main respiratory stimulus, the main thing that stimulates respiration is when CO2 is high. Low blood O2 levels also stimulate breathing, and you may have your hypoxic drive, and that is a backup system of controlled respiration. A decrease in the pH of the arterial blood that is caused by an elevation in the partial CO2 is called a primary respiratory acidosis. Okay. An increase in the pH of the blood that is caused by excessive exhalation of CO2 is called respiratory alkalosis. So both of these are from breathing. When you talk about respiratory acidosis and alkalosis, so pH decreases, you got acidosis. pH increases, you got alkalosis. Changes in partial CO2 may occur in response to metabolic problems, and they are called compensatory changes. Acid-base balance, normal is 7.35 to 7.45, and the most neutral is 7. Okay, that's the middle. This is some examples of what can be acidic and what's basic. So, a lot of times, your household ammonium, bleach, and stuff like that. When you think about acidic stuff, coffee's in the middle, saliva, milk, and blood, and then you're getting that tomato juice, that vinegar, that tangy stuff in your mouth taste. Okay, so when pH is high, the blood is alkalotic. When pH is low, the blood is acidotic. All right, buffer system. A buffer is a compound that can repeatedly neutralize excess acid or bases. Buffers absorb hydrogen ions when they are in excess and donate hydrogen ions when they are depleted. So iron shifts make the solution more acidic. At higher concentration of hydrogen ions or lower concentration of OH negative ions. To make the solution more basic, decreases of the amount of hydrogen or increase the amount of OH negative. Calcium ions also shift out of the cell in response to a influx of three main components to the buffer system: circulatory bicombinant buffer component, your respiratory component, the circulatory bicarbonate buffer component holds and neutralizes excess acid. The respiratory component's fastest way of the body can get rid of excess hydrogen ions is to create water and carbon dioxide, which can be expelled from the lungs. The renal component, kidneys maintain homeostasis by retaining certain products and filling out others, but it could take hours or days to restore the body back to its normal pH. So, the nervous system is control the breathing. The medulla oblongata is the primary responsible for respiration. So tidal volume is the amount of air moved into and out of the lungs during each single breath. Inspiratory reserve volume is the deepest breath you can take after a normal breath. So, expiratory reserve volume, maximum amount of air that you can forcibly breathe out after each normal breath. Residual volume is the gas that remains in the lungs simply to keep the lungs open. Vital capacity is the amount of air moved in and out of the lungs with maximum inspiration and expiration. The dead space portion of the respiratory system that has no alveoli. Minute volume is the amount of air that moves in and out of the lungs in 1 minute minus the dead space. So some characteristics of normal breathing is normal rate and depth, regular rhythm, good audible breath sounds on both sides of the chest, and regular rise and fall movement of both sides of the chest, like movement of the abdomen. All right, moving on to the circulatory system. Also called the cardiovascular system, is entirely closed. There is no outlet. It circulates on and on and on. And when it is an outlet, there's a problem. So systemic circulation in the body and pulmonary circulation in the lungs. The heart is a muscular organ that pumps blood throughout the body. Heart muscle is called the myocardium. blood enters into the right atrium via the superior and inferior vena cava and the coronary sinuses. Blood from four pulmonary veins enter into the left ventricle. Okay. So, located behind the sternum, it's about the size of a closed fist. Approximately 2/3 of the heart lies into the left part of the mediastinum. Pericardium, the pericardium sac, is a thick fibrous membrane that surrounds the heart at the base of the great vessels. Okay. Visceral layer of the pericardium lies closely against the heart and is also called the epicardium. The secondary layer of the pericardium is separated from the visceral layer by a small amount of pericardial fluid that reduces friction within the pericardium sac. Endocardium is the interior lining of the heart. The inner atrial septum separates the two atria. The intraventricular septum separates the right and left ventricles. Each atrium receives blood that is returned to the heart and other parts of the body. So each ventricle pumps blood out of the heart, and blood enters into the right atrium via the superior and inferior vena cava and the coronary sinus. Blood from four pulmonary veins enters the left atrium. Between the right and left atria is a depression, the fossa alveolus, which represents the formal location of the foramen ovule. So the valves of the heart are there to keep blood passing from the atria to the ventricle, flows through one or two atrioventricular valves. The tricuspid valve separates the right atrium from the right ventricle, and the mitral valve separates the left atrium from the left ventricle. The valves consist of flaps called cusp. So blood flow within the heart, superior vena cava and inferior vena cava return the oxygenated blood from the body to the right atrium. Freshly oxygenated blood is returned to the left atrium via the pulmonary veins, and left ventricle pumps oxygenated blood through the aortic valve into the aorta into the body. All right, the sound of the heart created by contraction and relaxation of the heart flow in blood. So you should hear a lub-a-dub-dub is what we usually like to hear. But the lub is the first heart sound and dub is the second heart sound. So, a murmur is a abnormal whoosh-like sound heard over the heart that indicates turbulent blood flow within the heart. A bruit is an abnormal whooshing-like sound heard over the main blood vessel that indicates turbulent flow within the blood vessel. The electrical conduction system brain controls the heart rate, thank goodness, and strength of contraction via the autonomic nervous system. Contractions are initiated within the heart in a group of complex electrical systems. Okay, so you had to sign that on SA node, sign an atrial node. You have your AV node, your bundle of His, your right and left bundle branches, and then your Purkinje fibers. So the SA node is the normal state of the origin of electrical pulses. It then travels down the AV node and electrical stimulation of the heart that continues towards the bundle of His, down the bundle branches, and terminates in the Purkinje fibers. So regulation of heart function in the conotropic state. The domotropic state and the inotropic state are provided by the brain. beta autonomic nervous system, alpha effects results in vasoconstriction, and then beta effects result in increased inotropic, domotropic, and chronotropic states. So a cardiac cycle assists systole, contraction of the ventricular mass and blood pumping into the systemic circulation. All right, diastole is the relaxation phase of the cycle. Pulse pressure is the difference between the systolic and diastolic pressures. The afterload pressure in the aorta against which the left ventricle must pump blood. The stroke volume is the amount of blood ejected in one contraction, and cardiac output is the amount of blood pumped in one minute. All right, starting along with the heart, increases venous return to the heart. Increased venous return to the heart stretches the ventricle, resulting in increased cardiac contractility. The ejection fraction is the percentage of blood pumped out of the left ventricle in each contraction, and preloads the pressure in which the ventricle feels. So blood is transported through the body in the arteries and veins. Arteries branch into many small arterioles that divide even into capillaries. The walls of the blood vessels are composed of 3 layers of tissue, and there's the name of those. The circulation of the heart is supplied via coronary arteries, emanates from left and right coronary arteries. The right coronary artery divides into 9 important branches, and the left main coronary artery divides into 2 branches: left anterior descending artery and the circumflex coronary artery. And there's a picture of all of that. So that right coronary artery and the circumflex branch of the coronary artery, those are pretty important, especially when you get blockages in these areas. Pulmonary circulation carries blood within the body from right side of the heart to the lungs and back to the left side of the heart. Deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle is pumped through the pulmonic valve into the pulmonary. Systemic arterial circulation, oxygenated blood leaves the heart through the aortic valve and passes into the aorta. 3 major arteries arise from the aortic arch: brachiosynthetic artery, the left common carotid artery, and the left subclavian. There's a picture of the vascular system. The head and neck have brachiosynthetic artery and some common carotid arteries. There's some upper extremities. Subclavian is pretty important. The axillary artery and the brachial artery. The thoracic arteries pump into the thoracic organs. The parietal arteries supply blood to the thoracic wall. Intercostal arteries branch into our anterior and posterior intercostal arteries. Here's your abdominal arteries. Your pelvis and lower extremity arteries. Systemic venous circulation of the head and neck, the thorax and the abdomen and pelvis, and all of these are veins. Your external jugular, we'll talk about it a lot. Your upper extremities and lower extremity veins. So your brachials, your femorals, anterior tibia. So blood composition is 55% plasma. and formed with elements or cells that are suspended in the plasma 45%, including round red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. That 55% is 92% water, 8% dissolved substances. So red blood cells carry oxygen into the tissues. White blood cells, also known as leukocytes, they play a role in allergic and inflammatory reactions. Platelets themselves are necessary for chemical reactions that occur to form a clot. So you do want to have plenty of platelets. Red blood cells contain antigens on the surface, stimulating the formation of antibodies. Determine which type of blood a person can receive. And there are A and B, AB and O. A pulse is created by blood pumping out of the left ventricle into the major arteries. The blood pressure itself, a pulse can be palpated easily at the neck, wrist, and growing. Central pulses are the carotid artery pulse and femoral artery pulses. Peripheral pulses include radial pulses, brachial artery pulses, posterior tibial artery pulse, and the dorsalis pedis arterial pulse, which is on your foot. Your cuff will give you the high and low point of the weight for your blood pressure. Resistance to blood flow within the blood vessel is your vascular resistance, an important relationship between the size and the vessels in shock. The average adult has about 5 liters of blood. Children have 2 to 3 liters, and infants have 300 milliliters. So, perfusion and circulation of blood in an organ or tissue, inadequate amount, loss of normal blood pressure, and an indication that blood is no longer circulating efficiently. So, shock is the state of inadequate circulation involving the heart automatically lowers blood volume as patient loses blood, so the heart adjusts. Adjustment attempts to maintain adequate pressure. This goes back to homeostasis. The heart pumps more rapidly to circulate the lower amount of blood and make sure that the rest of the cells are receiving appropriate CO2 and O2. Pulse increases as pressure falls, and if the blood loss is too great, adjustment fails and the patient goes in. So blood under normal pressure will gush or spurt intermittently. 30% of the blood is in the heart, arteries, and capillaries. 70% of the blood is in the veins and venules. All right. 2 main forces that work inside the capillary and hydrostatic pressure and osmotic pressure. Coagulation or clotting occurs when, as the result of a complex chemical process that creates small fibers near the injured blood vessels trapped in the red blood cells. All right, the lymphatic system transports lymph by passive circulation. So lymph is a thin plasma-like fluid formed from the interstitial and extracellular fluid. Lymph circulates through body in a thin wall of lymph vessels, and foreign material is filtered from lymph in the lymph nodes and returns to the main circulatory system via the thoracic duct. The lymph vessels only carry away fluid from the tissues. present in all tissue except the central nervous system, bone marrow, cartilage, and epidermis. The brain is the controlling organ of the body in the central nervous system. It has three major subdivisions: the cerebellum, the cerebellum, and the brainstem. So the cerebellum is the largest portion of the brain. It's composed of four lobes: the frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital. This is where brain cells in this area generate impulses that are sent along the nerve fibers that extend from each cell into the spinal cord. The cerebellum coordinates various activities of the brain. It's also called the little brain. The brain stem is most primitive to part of the central nervous system. It lies deep within the cranium and is best protected part of the central nervous system. It's comprised of three main areas: the midbrain, the pons, and the medulla oblongata, and the reticular activating system of the main midbrain keeps you conscious. So the spinal cord extends is an extension of the brainstem. It contains nerve cell bodies, and its nerve fibers transmit information to and from the brain. So the principal function is to transmit messages between the brain and the body. The meninges enclose the central nervous system. The dura mater is the toughest outer membrane. The acronoid is the second layer. And the pia mater is the innermost layer. It does float in cerebral spinal fluid, and which is manufactured by cells within the carotid. All right, the diencephalon is located between the brainstem and the cerebellum. It includes the thalamus, the subthalamus, the hypothalamus, and the epithalamus. The thalamus processes sensory input and influences mood and general body movement. The hypothalamus is vital in the control of many of the body functions. The limbic system is a so-called emotional brain and influences emotions, motivation, mood, and sensations of pain and pleasure. The peripheral nervous system composed of cables of nerve fibers, two portions: the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. So the somatic nervous system transmits signals from the brain into the voluntary muscles. The autonomic nervous system is split into two areas: the sympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for fight or flight, and the parasympathetic nervous system, which generally slows down the body. So there are two different types of peripheral nervous system. The sensory nerves carry information from the body to the central nervous system. The sensory nerve in the extremities are stimulated, impulses are transmitted along the peripheral nerve to the spinal cord. Special sensory nerves detect heat, cold, position, motion, pressure, pain, balance, light, taste, smell, and other sensations. So the motor nerves carry information from the central nervous system to the muscles of the body. Electrical impulses that are produced by the cell body in the spinal cord are transmitted along the motor nerve into the muscle and cause it to contract. Spinal reflexes are short fibers connecting the sensory nerves to the motor nerves. It creates a direct connection bypassing the brain. An irritating stimulus to the sensory nerve will be transmitted from the sensory nerve along the connecting nerve directly to the motor nerve. The cranial nerves, it was on that last slide. There's 12 pairs of cranial nerves at the base of the brain, and each nerve passes from the brain into the form of the skull to reach its endpoint. And you can learn about what each nerve does itself. It used to be a little song that could tell you, a little memory. The dermatomes is an area of the skin that corresponds to certain spinal nerves. All right, the eyeball is called a globe. The inner surface of the eyelids are exposed, and the exposed surface of the eye itself are covered by delicate membranes and conjunctiva, and pressure deconjunctiva is kept moist by fluid produced by the lacrimal gland. Behind the iris is the lens. Lens focuses images on the light sensitive area back to the globe called the retina. Within the retina are numerous nerve endings which respond to light by transmitting nerve impulses through the optic nerve to the brain. The central vision facilitates visualization of objects directly in front of you, and the remainder of the retina processes the peripheral vision. All right, then, in integumentary system, also called the skin. It is the largest system in the body. It serves as the interface between the body and the outside world. Human skin is a complex organ that plays a crucial role in maintaining the consistency of the internal environment. So the skin is divided into two parts. The epidermis is the superficial. It's composed of several layers of cells. The body's first line of defense. A lot of these cells are rubbed away and it's replaced by new cells. The dermis is the deeper one, the tough, highly elastic layer of connective tissues composed of collagen fibers, elastic fibers, and mucopolysaccharide gel. Below the skin lies the subcutaneous tissue layer, which consists mainly of fat. Below the subcutaneous tissue is a thick, dense layer of fibrous tissue known as the deep fascia. The orifices, the mouth and nose, are aligned with mucous membranes similar to the skin that provide a protective barrier against bacterial invasion, and differ from skin in the secrete mucus. So it does have three major functions: protect the body from the environment, regulate the temperature of the body, transmit information from the environment to the brain. It is a major organ for regulation of body temperature. The skin constricts when the body is cold and dilates when the body is warm. All right, the digestive system is also called the gastrointestinal system, composed of gastrointestinal tract and all these different little organs here. Digestion process of food that nourishes the individual cells of the body. The abdomen has 4 quadrants, and it contains major organs of digestion and excretion. So, in your right upper part, you'll find your little gallbladder and portion of the colon and small intestine. The right lower 2 portions of the large intestine, appendix, left lower descending and sigmoid portions of the colon, urinary bladder, kidneys. Your mouth is part of the digestive system. The oropharynx extends vertically from the back of the mouth to the esophagus and trachea. The esophagus extends from the end of the pharynx to the stomach. The stomach converts ingested food to chyle. That's how you pronounce that one. Pancreas produces insulin and digestive enzymes. All right. Your liver's poisonous substances produced by digestion or rendered harmless, forms factors necessary for blood clotting and production of normal plasma. It's connected by the intestine by bile ducts. The gallbladder serves as a reservoir and concentrate organ for bile produced in the liver. The small intestine is composed of the duodenum, ileum, and produces digestion products of digestion are absorbed into veins and to be transported to the liver. Large intestine consists of the colon and rectum. Absorbs final 5 to 10% of digested food and water from to form solid stool. All right, the appendix may easily become obstructed and become inflamed and infected. The rectum is that large hollow organ that stores quantities of feces until expelled. It's a complex series of circular muscles called sphincters, and it controls the escape of liquid gases and solids. Different secretions are added to food by salivary glands, the stomach, the liver, the pancreas, and the small intestine. And it converts food into basic sugars, fatty acids, and amino acids. All right, the endocrine system, complex message control system, endocrine glands excrete chemicals for elimination. The endocrine glands secrete and release chemicals that are used inside the body. Hormones regulate many body functions. Agonists are molecules that bind to receptor cells and triggers a release by that cell. Antagonist molecule that binds to a cell's receptor and blocks the action of an agonist. So here's a picture of the anatomy and physiology of the endocrine system. You see your pituitary glands there. Pituitary gland is often referred to as the master gland. Its secretions control other endocrine glands. The hypothalamus is a small region of the brain. Pituitary gland divides into two portions: the anterior pituitary and the posterior. During some times of stress, the hypothalamus secretes a hormone that stimulates the anterior pituitary gland. Thyroid gland is the large gland at the base of the neck. Secretes calcitonin. And this helps maintain normal calcium levels in the blood. Parathyroid gland, embedded in the posterior portion of each lobe of the thyroid, produces and secretes parathyroid hormone. The adrenal gland is located at the top of each kidney. Manufactures and secretes sex hormones and hormones that are vital in maintaining the body's water and salt balance. The inner portion of the adrenal gland produces epinephrine and norepinephrine. Excuse me. Reproductive glands and hormones. The gonads are the reproductive glands. Testosterone is a major androgen manufactured by the testes. Three major female hormones are estrogen, proestrogen, and human HCG. Controls discharge of certain waste and materials filled by the blood and kidneys. Main functions are to control fluid balance, fill and eliminate waste, and control the pH balance. This is getting into the urinary system. Kidneys rid blood of toxic waste to control balance of water and salt. Urine passes into the renal pelvis and the urinary bladder. And then the blood empties. The bladder empties through the urethra. The genital system. controls the reproductive process. The male genitalia lie outside the pelvic cavity. The female genitalia are contained within the pelvis. So here's the male reproductive organs. Consists of the scrotum, the testes, the endomyosis, and all kinds of other stuff. So the testicles produce male hormones and sperm. During ejaculation, the sperm is carried away from the vas differentia to the urethra, then deposited out. So here's the female reproductive system. Includes the ovaries, fallopian tubes, the uterus, cervix, and the ovaries produce the sex hormones and oocytes. The pituitary gland releases hormones at roughly monthly intervals. So during menstrual cycle, the ovum matures. If fertilization occurs, fertilized egg proceeds through the fallopian tube to implant in the uterus. If fertilization does not occur, hormone changes causes remnants of ovum and uterine lining to be slaughtered. So basically, your body cells, tissues, and organs all require oxygen, nutrients, and the removal of waste to perform their job. Okay? Oxygen is brought to the cells through respiratory and circulatory systems. Nutrients are made available to the body after we eat. Digestive system makes the food, takes the food, breaks it down into glucose, among other things. The circulatory system is the carrier of these supplies of waste. In anaerobic metabolism, very limited amounts of energy are able to be released, so the body must quickly correct the oxygen deficiency or risk cellular death. Important byproduct of anaerobic metabolism is lactic acid. Lactic acid is converted back into useful energy after an oxygen source is available. Anaerobic metabolism can be supported in most cells for only 1 to 3 minutes. And this is the end of chapter 7 of both the endocrine and digestive system. It has alpha cells that secrete glucagon, beta cells that secrete insulin, alpha and delta cells that secrete somatic statin. So insulin causes substances such as sugar, fatty acids, and amino acids to be taken up. Somatostatin is responsible for the inhibition of insulin. And glucagon stimulates the breakdown of glycogen and glucose to glucose and glycogenolysis. Body's going to be into the legs where that O2 and CO2 exchanges. Also, the O2 and CO2 exchanges in the lungs. It's pretty big vessels there. The aorta, and the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. Goes down and into. Okay, so this does not require any energy. Okay, if it's going from low to high, it's going to take a ATP. The ATP is going to bind to the transport protein. The transport protein is going to get the iron and move it through and push it on through. It gives it that little bit of extra boost. So facilitated transfusion has to have a energy to move it, and that's where your ATP comes in, and your ATP turns into ADP.